All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, October 14th, 2025. And I'd ask Clerk Tammer, please call the roll.
Nardini. Here. Bastido. Absent. Irby.
Here.
Brennan.
Here.
Barimas. Here. Bellinger.
Here.
Schenko. Here. Hill.
Present.
Graham.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
Toludo.
Here.
Baker.
Here.
Udera.
Here.
Virgil.
Here.
13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. Has anyone signed in for public comment?
No, Mayor.
And is anyone in the audience who would like to make public comment that did not have an opportunity to sign in? Seeing none, we'll move on to the business before the committee, starting with the review of the fiscal year 2026 budget. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. At your dais position tonight, there was a replacement page for the budget that is 2-5 regarding general fund revenues. I'll ask Director Coyle to explain the change.
So it was just an alignment issue. The microphones were guessed. In terms of how the lines, there was a row hidden for the grocery tax and a misalignment. So no changes to bottom line, no changes to number, just a printing error. So I apologize, but you have the correct page.
Thank you. Now we'd like to continue where we left off with page number 2-40, wireless radio, and Chief Dufort's here to take that and the ESDA line item.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know, our wireless radio system is owned by the city.
Chief, you might want to just direct a page.
Sure. 2-40.
Thank you. Very good.
Just get back, the wireless radio system is owned by the city. It started in 2009. We have 605 radios out in our commercial properties. They're maintained by Johnson Controls, which they have been since the inception, and they're monitored by DUCOM. We have different fees for Johnson Controls and DUCOM. One of the things that there is out there right now is a proposal for a fee change for budget year 2026. And if you look on 540020, you'll see that there was a reduction from $25,750 to $0, and that's because we feel that we have enough radios in stock right now that should cover us for next year. And that's about it for radios.
All right. Are there questions on the wireless radios?
I have a new component on these.
Alderman Bram.
Thank you. Same page, obviously, 240, line item, other services. If we can just briefly define what is falling in that close to whatever 176,000 proposed for 2026 for other services.
That's basically the fees we paid to Johnson Controls and to DUCOM for both of those.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. We'll move on. Somehow I've lost my agenda for the.
You need it?
You got one?
ESDA will be on 2-42.
There's a revenue source you should ask.
All right. Go ahead. Page. Next page.
Just some of the 2025 accomplishments. This year we completed several weather review with members of City Hall and administration on how to respond in the event of a severe weather threat, and also review the different threat levels for the National Weather Service. So that's basically talking about the differences in the threat levels for weather. Trained with the police department drone pilots and using the mobile incident command vehicle. They mounted some TVs on there. We use it at our special events. And we continue to work with Elmhurst Hospital's Safety Committee, with the main topic being mass casualty SOPs, both in the hospital patient flow areas and security lockdown in the facility. We had a recent incident at the hospital where there was a lockdown, and they're just starting to address those interior and exterior, whether it happens in the hospital or out in the parking lot. And then if you look on 2-43, 4-1, which is the page before, you'll see a J form for $14,100. That is the new radios that we've gotten from ETSB and DUCOM, and that's basically a fee that we're going to have to pay for on non-emergency responder radios over the next 4 years. So it's $14,100 for the next 4 years. Some of the goals for next year is to conduct an update on the City of Elmhurst Emergency Operating Plan to be submitted to the state by March of '26 for approval, to compile information for the National Incident Management System, which is reported to the state of Illinois, and then conduct a functional exercise in early 2026 for reunification for citizens after a disaster, which is required by IEMA, which is Illinois Emergency Management Agency. And you will notice on 2-42, page 2-42, there's some budget reductions on there, which one is 530-100, which is our consultant fees. That is our Fulton sirens. They take care of our emergency sirens around town. You'll see a reduction from $22,000 to $12,000. That was because we were unsure of a siren at Jefferson School that we thought we were going to have to run the electric to this year or next year. We weren't sure, but our electrical division was out there, took a look at it, and they fixed it earlier this year, and we haven't had any problems with it. So we made that one reduction. And on the same page, you'll see in our other section, a reduction from $96,650 to $60,000, and that's basically our kind of our catch-all, kind of a rainy day fund. We've used it in the past for one. We didn't have money in our for our sirens to make a move over at York High School, and we used it for that. We used some of that money this year for flooring in the basement at Station 1 and a new air conditioner down at Station 1, which is unlike what we had to do at Station 2. This was a smaller unit for just the basement. And then the only other thing in a line item for that would be in ESDA is $10,000 towards a UTV purchase in 2026. Yeah, most of that, we talked about that last time, most of that is being funded by the 2% of the Foreign Fire Insurance Fund.
Okay. Alderman Bram.
Yeah, just, I know that we just passed this topic, but in regards to the revenue for the alarm system, I know there's hopefully a one-to-one offset. Do we know the numbers of the revenue versus the expenses for the wireless alarms?
So that item was on the Finance Committee agenda for tonight. So if you go to the Finance Committee meeting, there is an analysis that we put together for that meeting. So the Finance Committee looked at the DUCOM fee back in 2022, and DUCOM raised the rates that we received from them in 23, 2024, and 25. There were successive increases. And so when the Finance Committee looked at that back in 2022, at that time, they decided not to pass on that increase and to review the fees again in 2025. So we're at that point. The increase that's recommended in the budget does two things. One, it looks at tiering the rate structure for those, so that a smaller business may pay a smaller rate versus a larger business that has more square feet would obviously require a larger fire response. So it looks at that. It looks at covering the fee costs, but it also does provide, one of the things that the Finance Committee looked at in evaluating the wireless fees is it looks at kind of the indirect costs of the fire department and the DUCOM fees associated with that. So the fee increase not only covers the cost of the increases, but looks at kind of what the paying for some of the indirect costs of the fire department, which is the DUCOM costs that the city incurs. And so we did talk about that tonight in the Finance Committee, did kind of a first look at that, that proposed increase.
Okay. My question was just to get a
Sorry.
bearing on. No,
too
that was
long of an answer.
Great detail, but on, are we close to revenues and expenses offsetting one another in this past fiscal year, 2024, 2025?
Yeah, in 2024, 2025, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Nardini.
Thank you. Chief, couple questions that I don't understand. Line Central Garbage Services, 590, 910. I'm guessing that is getting swapped from one place to another, but it's tripling. Can you elaborate that change? And why is there no J form for it?
It's on page 242.
This is page 242,
Right.
line 590910.
So that is related to the creation of the Central Fleet Fund, which is the next fund that we'll go into a little more detail on. So this was looking at the vehicles served by the ESDA department. So we have an emergency services coordinator, and then we also have the MIC, we refer to it as a MIC, but it's basically an RV that serves that department as well. So it was looking at the allocation of costs to ESDA and kind of making those appropriate, and then adding the vehicle contribution as well as part of the Central Fleet Fund creation.
That's 11, this is 10, just the
Right.
garbage.
So that's really just looking at the realignment of what is their share of fleet maintenance services for their fleet. So if you look at, if you look at page, I gotta find this page again. If you go back under supplemental information and you go to page 10-34,
I'm with you.
and you look at the top set of brackets with the pink, that looks at how we allocate maintenance expenses amongst all of the departments. And it looks at like what the bottom line number is. So you can see in 2025 budget, we were estimating 2.9 million in fleet maintenance costs to allocate. The 2026 budget allocates 2.7 million in expenses, and then it shows the difference in percent allocation between the two different the funds. You may be asking why they don't add up to 100% in the one column. That is because they were not allocating the Central Fleet Fund costs to their own department.
I was hoping to see something that is a line item that at least associates with garbage. I guess I'm just sticking.
It's
Alderman Nardini,
garage.
it's garage.
Oh, that answers a bunch of stuff for me.
But thank you for this moment, Alderman Nardini. I will never forget this. And I will not let you forget it either.
Thank you. All right. Then
Could you
another
pronounce
one.
it garage? Yeah, okay, very good.
Mama didn't raise a speller. Sorry about that. Then the last thing, the $14,000 in radios. Give me from 0 to 14,000. What's changing and what's new?
It's basically, we just got brand-new radios for the entire department. Any radio that's not a first responder, we have to pay for, to the tune of, these radios are about $18,000 a piece. So that is a fee that we're being charged over 4 years' time that pays for the mobile incident command radios. That number actually is probably going to come down.
When and by how much?
We're not exactly sure. We're waiting to find out whether they accept what we changed from 8 radios down to a couple radios. So likely it's going to go, most likely it's going to go down. The mayor probably could answer that a little bit easier just because he's been more involved.
So the 911 fee that you pay pays into our Electronic Telephone Service Board, or whatever it's called. They buy all our radios for the guys out there that are first responders, the police and the fire. If you're not a first responder, and we want a radio for that person, I think maybe our ESDA director would not be a first responder, so we pay for that radio. But they're all purchased centrally, so we're not just going out and shopping them. They all have to work together. So we kind of get the prices in a way dictated to us on what they're going to be.
And how regularly is that purchase cycle? We haven't done it in a couple of years.
It's been 5
10,
years,
at least 10 years, yeah.
Got it. Thanks for indulging me on the garbage thing. Appreciate it.
We should take a break here. All right. Other questions on this one? Alderman Irby.
Thank you, Mayor. On page 242, we're just right below that garbage line. I just had to go at it. The vehicle replacement contribution with our new vehicle fleet fund, if you will. So we have 147.2, and then we have that. It looks like that probably, if I saw that 4 or 5 years out, I'm going to assume it's probably going to be at 147.2. But if you take 147.2 and multiply that by 5, that won't be enough to buy the $1.6 million RV mobile incident command unit. So how are we going to get this 147.2 to cover the cost if all we had to do in the fire department was just buy that mobile incident command? So I'm just not seeing how the numbers
Can we
get
hold
there.
that conversation to the next agenda item? We're going to go over the fleet fund, which I think will answer a lot of these central fleet questions in more detail. And if you still have that question, then we'll
table
talk
that,
about
put
it.
a pin on it.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else on ESDA? All right. We'll move on to Central Fleet Fund.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to transition and have Director Balicki come up. But I did want to offer some commentary on the radio conversation. And I want to give Mayor Levin credit for a lot of work that he did in very short time when he took over as the chairman of DUCOM. This radio issue has been going on for years, and it was just not getting resolved. We couldn't get the right people in the room all at once. And when Mayor Levin came in, he sat down and spent a lot of time with the people that needed to be the decision makers and got that done. And so I've gotten a number of messages from my colleagues expressing their gratitude for Mayor Levin taking care of that. So,
Thank you, City Manager.
and we just got ours on Thursday, Chief reports.
I was there. A great day.
Thanks, Chief. So the next item, as Christina said, is Central Fleet Fund, which she is going to talk about. In the meantime, Stan's going to come up and be ready to run through Public Works. So Christina, I'll turn it over to you.
So you have a brand new tab this year called Internal Service Fund in your budget book. So if you could navigate to that tab, and I'm going to explain it actually backwards, working forwards, and what I'm going to explain is kind of the structure of the fund, how to look at it. I'm going to explain the fund balance and kind of highlight some of the things that we looked at with the Finance Committee. And then I will turn it over to Stan if you have specific expense questions for the fund that you want us to address.
6-1.
So if you actually start at 6-4, we're going to start at the expense portion of this budget, just in terms of explaining how this internal service fund works. So if you look at the expense part of this budget, it really would mirror, if you go back to the central fleet maintenance department budget in the general fund, if you look from salaries and wages all the way down through commodities, that would mirror exactly what you've seen in prior years in the central maintenance budget. So those costs, those maintenance costs that used to be in the central maintenance budget have been moved into this fleet fund. So you understand where those come from, and those are outlined as what's budgeted here. Looking under capital outlay, you will see that is all of the vehicles for the city that are budgeted in the mobile equipment and vehicles line item. So this central fleet fund centralizes all of the fleet maintenance costs and all of the fleet replacement costs. So such that when you look at these two line items, this is citywide vehicle replacement dollars. And then at the bottom, it's really just the allocation of costs of, obviously, the central garage maintains its own cars, replaces its own vehicles, and then also the IT services transfer that it receives. So that's kind of the first piece of the pie that you're looking at when you're doing a internal service fund, is what are the expenses that we need to allocate amongst the other departments to be able to charge them for the fund services. So when a fleet fund receives contributions from departments to the fleet fund to be able to run the fleet fund maintenance and make the vehicle replacements. So that's kind of you start with the expenses as the baseline of these are the costs that need to be recovered by the various departments. Now flipping backwards, if you want to look at 6-3, this looks at the revenues that come into the fleet fund. So at the very top, when you look at charges for services, these were revenue accounts that were in the general fund that were actually revenues for fleet services. So Park District equipment maintenance, we receive dollars from the Park District to maintain some of their vehicles. Gasoline purchased by the Park District and the school district, those are revenues that were in the general fund, but they are for fleet services. So they offset costs before they're allocated to the departments. And then interest income, sale of assets, those are other offsetting revenues. Once you kind of get down to the net amount that needs to be contributed from the departments, you then allocate that amongst the departments. And there's two ways that we allocate those between the departments. Maintenance, we looked at lifetime maintenance costs for vehicles on a percentage basis per department, and that's how we came up with the allocations for maintenance and how to allocate what percentage of the fleet maintenance budget the fire department is going to pay for, the police department is going to pay for, the ESDA department is going to pay for, the MUF is going to pay for. We looked at what those costs were to come up with that allocation. And that is how we have come up with all of those contributions in the various departments. So you will notice that this year there are some departments that didn't have a maintenance contribution that have fleet vehicles that are now contributing. So we really took a holistic look at the city's budget and said, if you're a department and you have vehicles that are being maintained, you should be contributing. So that created some of the questions that aldermen are having of why is this number up or is this number down for fleet? It's kind of holistically looking at that. What's the department's fair share to contribute for maintenance expenses into this fund, even though really the total dollar amount of maintenance costs really hasn't changed. The second part that we looked at is what amount does each department need to contribute for capital replacement? This is a brand new fleet fund. We do not have the dollars available, nor do we want to necessarily, to be able to fund specific vehicles. That's something that you would look at. If you have a mature fleet fund, you would take, for example, the fire truck and make sure by the time you need to have the fire truck to be replaced that you've contributed, say it's 1/10. Say we want to take $1 million and we want to contribute every year $100,000 so that when we get to year 10, we have $1 million in the bank to replace that fire truck. In a perfect world, that's how a fleet fund would operate. And, we hope that our fleet fund will be there at some day. But the amount that we would have to contribute as a start up to this fund to be able to do that would be cost prohibitive in starting this fund, to fund it in that manner. So what we looked at was how do we responsibly get this fund off the ground, be able to provide enough dollars into the fund so that over, the near term, which what we really looked at is a 5-year forecast for this fund, which is why you see 5 years presented here, and it's what the Finance Committee looked at. Over that term, what amounts do we need to contribute annually to be able to make sure there are enough dollars in the fund to replace the vehicles that are coming due within the next 5 years. And so if you look now on page 6-2, this is the holistic view of the fund where we look at how much is the fund bringing in, what are the expenses of the fund for both maintenance and capital expenses to get to what is the change in fund balance year over year, and then what is the ending fund balance that we have. So looking to make sure that we're contributing enough that we're able to replace vehicles, but not making the creation of this fund cost prohibitive to the other departments and the other operating funds. So then the amount that's coming into the fund for capital replacement is this $4,200,000. $250,000 of that is an excess contribution from the capital fund that the Finance Committee recommended. The remainder of it is just a $3.752 million contribution that we have just allocated, not by vehicle, not looking to make sure that the fire department truck is allocated in $100,000 increments. It's what is the total amount that we need to allocate that needs to come into the fund, and then how do we pro rata divide that out amongst the departments. So we came up with that dollar amount that needs to be contributed to make the fund whole, and you'll notice by the end of year 5, it is slightly, we went $383,000 to the negative. That's, looking 5 years out, we will look at this every year. We do typically see that, we do get some savings on some vehicles, so we will continue to monitor that and make sure that number as we get closer is positive, but that, little amount of a negative balance isn't a matter to be concerned at this point. But then how we came up with the allocation amongst the departments is we looked at the value of our total fleet and basically said, police department, if you have 20% of the value of the total fleet, of that of the $4.002 million, or sorry, it's a 3.5. So take the total amount here less the 250. That gets you to your 3752 number. Of that amount, police department, you're going to contribute 20%. Fire department, you're going to contribute this percent. MUF, you're going to contribute that percent. So it's not on a vehicle by vehicle basis. So if you look at it from that perspective of, hey, I'm looking at the fire department and they're not contributing enough to replace their vehicle when that comes due, you're correct, because that's not how we looked at kind of how to create this fund at this point. That's maybe a goal to get to someday with this fund, and we'll continually look at what that contribution is on an annual basis as part of the budget. But we're looking at it solely to how do we get this fund started and make sure there's enough balance in this fund that's contributed over the 5-year term to replace vehicles when they come due and cover the maintenance costs.
All right, Alderman Toledo.
I would just like to thank Director Coyle and staff for that great explanation, and just to reiterate, to connect the dots for the alderman, this is a result in this budget book of a report that the Finance Committee issued to all of you and that you approved a couple weeks ago, relating to the ultimate goal of smoothing out the vehicle fleet costs on a year-over-year basis in our budget. So it is new for us this year, but it is something that the Finance Committee and Director Coyle and her team worked on for a number of weeks and months over the summer that resulted in the report and in this action in our budget book. Thank you.
All right, Alderman Brennan.
Thank you. So if we were to see future state grants or federal grants or whatever, that would show in this fund under other income?
Correct.
Is that, okay.
Correct. So if we got a grant, we would just have a line item in this fund to show grant revenue that then would offset the cost of that vehicle. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I know that you just explained that it's not vehicle for vehicle, but for instance, like in 2029, we have $6,400,000. Is that number tied to, well, we'll need a new fire truck, a new forest department truck, or because if it's not tied vehicle for vehicle of what's coming in, I assume there's a schedule somewhere of what's going out?
Correct. So if you look on page 6-5, this is the actual vehicles being budgeted to be replaced, and this aligns with the vehicle replacement schedule in the KEB. the capital expenditure budget that we see.
Okay.
So these will tie to each other.
Very good. Other questions? Alderman Irby.
Thank you, Mayor. I do appreciate us building this fund, and when I was in finance, I remember Chair Toledo brought it up, and we discussed it, and then they finished it after I moved out. I just don't remember the repairs being a part of it. I remember it was a CapEx initial discussion. If anyone could elaborate, when did maintenance jump into the fund?
So great question. So maintenance was already a cost we were allocating amongst departments. We were just allocating it and then bringing it back into the general fund. So there was an allocation already being done in our budget. And so it just made sense if we're doing that allocation to put all the fleet costs in one place where you can see where all of those allocations go and the expenses come out. And that's typical to have, many fleet internal service funds either have both a fleet maintenance fund and a replacement fund, or they combine them into kind of one fleet fund. So that was the rationale behind putting them as well in here, is because that allocation was being done.
Okay. I'm just a little bit worried about when you take let's just say it was a $6 million, I'm just going to pretend we have a $6 million average that we're spending out of the fund, just making up a number that could be in the ballpark. If you take $6 million, how many years would if I'm trying to back in and see what are we spending per vehicle in the fund, we have 166, give or take, vehicles, about 6 apparatus. Let's say we have 160 non-apparatus fleet count. If I took 6 million times 7 years, what number would I take? Then divide that by 160. I'm going to come up with a number per vehicle that we're spending, and which would be CapEx, and that would also be repair and maintenance. And I believe you alluded to a third item of an IT overhead related to the fleet, if you will. Mm-hmm. So with those 3 components, that would be in this back-end analysis to say, what is the metric we're spending on the cars or the fleet? I'm going to take the 6 apparatus out because they're such large numbers that are very difficult to extrapolate that information from that population of 6 or 7 vehicles back to the 160. So that's why I pulled that out of the 166 vehicle when I brought that number up just now. Does that make sense when we try to back in? Is that a valid math exercise?
So I guess I would say the costs to operate our fleet haven't changed. It's just an accounting for where they are. So when we look at what I'll say the non-capital outlay costs in this fund, we haven't changed or added. It's just merely an accounting of moving them here. So there's been no real change. We're not changing how we're maintaining the fleet or any of those things. That's remaining the same.
If I can add, I don't know that I don't know that we're doing the analysis that you're asking for, Alderman Irby, in that Public Works has dump trucks and street sweepers, and so you can't compare necessarily a pickup truck or a squad car to some other piece of equipment. I appreciate you're saying, pull the fire equipment out, but I still don't think you're getting to the number that you want to. I don't think that's a fair exercise.
So you think if we pulled out the vacuum?
Yeah, you'd have to get down to a very specific
Well, like 40
group.
vehicles that are class 5, 6, and up, and get down to the
then you
under
also have to take
10,000
those
vehicle trucks.
But we have to figure out those expenses and take those out to do that math equation.
Because if I was right at 6 million, or let's say it was in the ballpark, I'm not right, I'm just saying if I was in the ballpark, and you multiplied that by, say, 8 years was an average life of the whole fleet, minus the apparatus, take the apparatus out, that would be, divided by 100, so that'd be $300,000 on average we spend for every single average in the fleet. If you took 6 million times 8 years, divided by 160. Is that where we are? Just because this kind of identifies our
You're talking about
repair and maintenance and our auto cost in total, and we've never really seen that until now. So that, I think this is very valuable.
Well, I think if you look at the CAB, on page 95 of the CAB, that's what I was talking about, to call everyone's attention. All the vehicles we have are listed there. And there's like if you look at the fire department, you see which trucks need to be placed, when, what the cost is, and then you go down to the bottom of, it'll tell you if you added up all the vehicles per year, we get to our capital. So, I mean, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm just checking the numbers, trying to get a ballpark of knowing where we are with our fleet.
I mean, we have hundreds.
How many years are we getting out of our fleet? Are we getting a 5-year average, an 8-year average?
Well, a fire truck could be 10.
Or 20.
Or 20.
But we're pulling the fleet out, the apparatuses are out of the equation. I'm looking at,
Even still, each vehicle is different. A police vehicle that's on the road every day goes 3 or 4 years. A public works pickup truck might go 8 to 10. An inspector's vehicle might go 10 to 15. And that's what we rely on our fleet maintenance to look at every year to see, can we push them further? And we do that. We look at it. We have a date where we think it's supposed to be replaced. Then we look at, can we get another year or two out of that? Or can we rotate it to a different department? So I don't know that the analysis you're doing right now is a fair representation of how much per vehicle it costs to maintain and replace.
Anything?
I'll let it I'm good. How's that?
Okay. Okay, others on the fleet, Star Fleet. City Treasurer.
One observation I had in this, one observation I'll have, and then I'll ask a question to Director Coyle. Going back to our fund balance chart on 1-9, for 2026, we're sitting at the 14 million fund balance expectation. And then you look at 6-2, this fund balance of this fund is about 2 million. For me, I kind of look at these combined, say, okay, we got the 14 million general fund, and then this fund has been, it's benchmarked for vehicles, but essentially in this first year, we're almost pulling our own fund balance to fund some of this. So ultimately, my question is that 2 million that we're going to have as fund balance, that's just going to sit in the same type of account that our general fund monies would sit in, and we're going to, we could potentially earn interest as we would if this was just in the general fund?
Correct. So the fund in the first year is predicted to take in more contributions than vehicle replacements, right? And that's part of the smoothing process of trying to make sure there are funds. But yes, these funds, we've budgeted kind of an amount in here for interest income to show that, yes, these will be interest earning funds and they will get an interest income allocation like our other funds do. Yep.
All right. Anyone else? And we will move on to Public Works. And we're starting on 247.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Levin and City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I'd like to start off just with a couple of brief highlights of some accomplishments that we had in Public Works this year that I think are notable, and just touch on a couple of goals, some things that we're looking forward to in the coming year. One of the things that I always talk about when it comes to Public Works is that a lot of what we do oftentimes is behind the scenes. We generally don't show up with lights and sirens going, and so oftentimes there's some really good work that doesn't necessarily get noticed. And just a couple of things, especially on the operations side of the department, there's some things that I think are worth noting in terms of the fact that the city attained its 45th consecutive Tree City USA Award this year. That's something that's held by about 16% of communities in Illinois. The fleet, which we just got done talking about, our fleet was ranked as the 37th greenest fleet in North America by the National Association of Fleet Administrators. That's something that's the second year that we've been in the top 50, and that was also an improvement over the prior year. So that's certainly a recognition of lots of hard work on our fleet group. And also, on the water side, the city received its 4th consecutive Gold Water Ambassador Award by the Illinois section of the American Water Works Association, which was something that was new in 2021. Recognizes the city's efforts to communicate the value, the importance of clean drinking water to its community and help educate the community on the importance of it. So those are some things on the operational side. And also, obviously, we have the construction side of what we do and the things people see out in the community. I think one of the really noteworthy things that was completed this year was the reconstruction of Alma Avenue with traffic calming features that were part of that reconstruction. And those were also something that were a part of kind of that initial neighborhood traffic study that was done in that area. And I think what's notable about that and what makes me want to mention it is that we have some kind of post-construction speed data on that street that showed that, in fact, speeds have reduced on that street. And that was, I think several of you know, that was a hot button traffic topic for quite a while. And it certainly still remains an area of importance with its proximity to the high school. But I think it's really great to see that something that was done from an infrastructure improvement has helped improve traffic safety in that neighborhood. And then lastly, as far as this year, and I think not to go unnoticed, is that our staff was part of a larger team here at the city that was instrumental in putting together the RFQ process to hire an architect for the police station project that will be upcoming in the next year. That was probably roughly about a half a year process, and so I'm happy to say that we're at the point where we'll have that architect on board very soon, and we'll start that design process going into next year. So as far as a few goals that we have coming into 2026, I mentioned the police station design. That'll be something that Public Works, as well as many other departments here at the city, will be involved with as we move forward on that. We'll also complete the engineering for 2 remaining large-scale comprehensive flood plan projects, in particular the North Galway Woods stormwater project and the Spring and Eggleston stormwater projects. Those are projects that have been in the stormwater plan for quite some time, and certainly many have been completed and undertaken over the years, but these are a couple of large ones that will be coming to a conclusion on design in the next year. We will also be moving towards design and construction on a significant pump station and reservoir rehab project on our water system, which is something that's needed at this point in time to update our electrical components, control systems, and the physical reservoirs and pump stations that are positioned throughout the community to serve our drinking water customers. And lastly, I would say that, and this is something that has started in 2025 but will conclude next year in 26, is the award of a new contract for residential solid waste and recycling services. That's something that is currently out to bid. We expect proposals back in early November, and that'll be something that'll be coming and working its way through the committee and council process here through the holiday season into early part of 2026. So just a couple of kind of high-level things to touch on, and what I'd like to do from that point, if we can kind of dive into the review of more of the detail of Public Works budget. The first page in Public Works that I have is 2-47. That is the essentially the administrative cost center for Public Works. There's a couple of things that I would like to, as we go through these, I'll touch on some of the the J forms for each of the areas, as well as some areas that we've implemented some budget reductions going into the coming year. And maybe I'll start there. So in the street administration cost center, the 6060 cost center, the account, the 530-120 account, which is employee training, has been reduced for 2026 from $33,000 down to $30,000. I'll move through these quickly. The account 549999, there is typically a placeholder in that account for $24,000 that is a placeholder for sustainability initiatives. That has been removed from the proposed budget for this coming year. And another reduction in that cost center in the 531205 account, there's been a reduction of $50,000 in that account, and that will basically reduce. We've been going through the neighborhood traffic studies in trying to do 2 at a time, essentially, to kind of work through the community. The proposed funding reduction would reduce that down to 1 for 2026.
What line is that, Director Bilecki?
That was account number 531205. With respect to the J forms, and those are on page 2-48, there are 3 items. One is an increase in property and liability insurance. I think this is something that as we go through the Public Works budget, you'll see some common themes that's kind of spread across multiple accounts because that is a cost that, much like the fleet costs, kind of is proportioned across all city accounts. That has an increase of $10,000 for 2026. The second item is account 540010 for minor equipment, and there is an increase in that account that's proposed, and this is essentially minor equipment in Public Works. And for 2026, there is, I'll say in particular, notable, there's $17,000 has been requested for downtown sidewalk cleaning equipment in there. That has kind of bumped that up for this year. That's one of those that, and you can kind of see from the account history, kind of ebbs and flows depending on what might be up for purchase in any given year. And the last one is the 590-911 account, which relates to the conversation that just occurred in terms of vehicle replacement contributions, that being a new expense for this coming year. So that is the street administration account.
All right. Alderman Virgil.
Same page, 247, there's a couple of line items for part-time wages as well as contract staffing. That's row 510110 and 530105. Based on previous year's actuals and estimated for 2025, there's a bit of an increase in those. Just trying to understand why.
Christine, do you want to speak to wages?
Give the lines again.
Sorry?
Would you give the line numbers again, please?
Line numbers, 510110, that's the part-time wages.
I don't.
Contract staffing is 530105.
So hold on from seasonal contract there.
Got it.
I just want to, I have a recollection of what the increase is for part-time. I just want to make sure that I'm stating correctly. So there are 2 intern additions in the part-time staff for 2026. So one is a 1-year-only summer intern that was proposed to be added, and the other one was a part-time additional winter intern that was added to the budget. So that's the increase in the part-time wages. Contract staffing is level budget over budget, I believe.
It is, but
Yes.
based on the estimated and actuals from previous years.
Sure, the contract staffing services, that is for plan review services. So this year, that just basically has not been utilized to the full capacity of the budget. We do have a staff member that is out and is going to be out for a bit. So I see us probably having to ramp up those contract plan review services going into certainly the early part of 2026.
So if I understand, you're saying, based on what we know now, we think definitely we're going to need at least some of it for the beginning of the year?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And we always want to be ready in the event that we see an increase in development so that we have the plan review services ready to go. That's something we can scale up and down as we need to, which is why we're conservative with the number.
Are we expecting an increase in development, though?
Well, if some of the developments come through that we've been talking about, quite possibly, and as Stan said, we have a staff member who recently went out on a leave, so we'll need to replace that service.
Okay.
Good. Alderman Nardini, there's no garbage line here, but go
No,
right
but
ahead. Yeah.
it's close to it unless I spelled it incorrectly. What is $17,000 of sidewalk cleaning equipment?
So basically, it's power washing equipment that'll allow us to clean the sidewalks downtown.
All right.
Alderman Brennan, then Alderman Virgil.
Thank you. So this is sort of a macro question. So I'm on page 242-47. Last council meeting, we talked about an increase in benefits of roughly 1.5 million annually. So when I looked at this, I know it's a small part of the overall public works budget. You know, the benefit section is actually, trending downwards. So it doesn't necessarily match what I would have expected to be increases. So general comment, I know this is just such a small subset of the city.
So I can explain that change. If you look in Public Works in general, so we transitioned to a new payroll system. The old system didn't have the ability for health insurance to follow people. So kind of with that system, health insurance now follows people. We have a better accounting for where health insurance is allocated to specific departments. There also, I believe, was also one staff member in this department that, like a kind of a change in staffing where somebody didn't elect insurance that had in the past, that impacted that. But as far as seeing it go from the 1.2, what you'll see is just a better accounting and allocation amongst the departments, and that's why that decrease is there.
Well, the workers' comp is also a significant change.
Yes, workers' comp is actually based on claims that we pay and our budget for those claims. So as departments fluctuate and whether those claims cost goes up and down, we do our best guess as to what workers' compensation is going to be for the various departments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Alderman Virgil?
Thank you. The line item on the same page that you mentioned earlier regarding traffic studies, that's 531205. Which study are we talking about for 2026? Is that a new one, or is that a number that we've seen before, like 8, for example?
I would defer to our city engineer. I don't think this is one that we've taken to committee or council yet. This would be
Number 9?
number 9, number 10, sure. But
Okay.
yeah, it's not one that you've seen yet.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But we should be mindful, like as I've talked to city manager, that I've asked that when we talk through the budget, that we specifically identify things that are being cut so that people know when we get to next year, if we say this is what we're doing, and someone says, well, why aren't we doing a traffic study over here? We're only doing 1, we always did 2. This would be an example of something that is a cut that's contained within the budget to be considered. Alderman Toledo.
It's a perfect segue, because my question was going to be to ask specifically when we're going through departments' budget lines, if you could do us the favor of identifying places that you have cut. I know we don't usually do that. We talk about the J forms, things that are going up. But if you could call out things that you have already taken out of your budget in reaction to the situation that we're presented with, that would be helpful, I think, for all of us from a transparency perspective. And then specifically to that, is the building improvements on this page one of those things? I know the vehicles is just a swap between accounting lines for the central fleet fund, but is the building improvement, it's basically zeroed out?
So there's 2 responses that I can on that. So yes, we originally had budgeted to do phase 1 engineering for the Public Works garage improvement. So that was pushed out. However, that was a capital funded item. So that doesn't really impact our general fund discussion of what the general fund balance is and revenues versus expenses. So cutting that was not a balancing the general fund budget. We pushed that out a couple of years because we did receive our permit notice that the phosphorus timeline is pushed out, and really looking at our capital fund and our capital 5-year plan, not wanting to spend all of our dollars in 2026 and being mindful of how we prioritize projects among the 5 years. That's why that number was zeroed out.
But this is a general fund budget.
Right, but we make
account.
transfers from the capital fund to fund the general fund. So this would be a general fund expense line item that we then have a revenue transfer in from the capital fund to pay for. Right,
Got it.
so, yeah.
Alderman Irby.
Yeah, real quick on follow up on Alderman Toledo's question of the budget cuts. I think Director Blicky mentioned that there was a $2,000 reduction in one of the line items, and he labeled it sustainability. Did I hear that correctly?
24,000.
24,000. So just so I know, and I don't know if I like it or not yet, unless I know what did we give up. What would that have been if we did spend it? And then we're now potentially going to cut it if we approve it.
The answer is we don't know, because that is, as I mentioned, it's just been a placeholder. So it's budgeted there, it's been budgeted there. If there's some opportunity, some idea that comes up or works its way into being, that there's some dollars there to make that happen. And in the absence of something specific, that was identified as an area that could be reduced for this coming year.
And so that was just applicable for this one item of 6060 streets admin, which I believe streets has 15 full-time equivalents in it in total?
I believe 11.
11? So how many are those 11 are in street admin 6060?
I would have to defer to the finance director on that answer. I don't.
It's kind of hard to see what the payroll cost is if you don't know how many people are FTE into that budget.
Not everyone is So not everyone is allocated 100% to this line item. So There's 11 full-time employees allocated in some fashion to this cost center,
To 60/60.
to 60/60, yes.
Thank you.
You know, the majority of the employees are engineering and administration employees. So it's not like it's not maintenance workers or streets level employees that are costed here.
Right. Any other questions on streets administration? Then we move on to street maintenance.
Okay, this is page 2-49. So kind of to follow up on the discussion and the request to identify some of the reductions for next year, I'll say that the bulk of them for Public Works are in this cost center. So bear with me when I go through these. I'll start with this. So the first one, and the single largest dollar item, is in the account 570-140 in this cost center. And that is a reduction to the city's contract paving program for next year in the amount of $1,356,000.
I'm sorry, what's the line number?
It's account number 570-140.
You have to flip the page over.
Next page.
What do you know? Thank you.
What?
So there's several in this account, so bear with me as I go through them in this cost center. Another item that it also would reside in this 570-140 account would be deferring parking lot maintenance. That is in the amount of $82,500. And the third item that would typically show up in this 570-140 account is inlet cleaning, and that was a reduction of $165,000. Okay, so I apologize if these are not necessarily in account order. I have a spreadsheet here that I'm working from. There was a reduction in the 531-080 account.
531. Say that again,
Pardon me,
Director
no, that one is not correct, sorry.
Slapjacking?
Let me jump to the 531-200 account. There was a reduction of $30,000. There was an item that was originally budgeted, for some fence repair. That's part of that reduction. In account 539-999, there was $25,000 budgeted there for permeable paver maintenance, which has been reduced. In account 540-200, there had been a request originally for guardrail replacement on West Avenue. That was reduced to the amount of $40,000.
Sorry, could you give that line number one more time?
540-200.
Thank you.
So that was a reduction of $40,000. And then account 549-999 was a reduction of $9,000. Let's see, there was one more I wanted to mention. Did we move street sweeping to, okay, we moved street sweeping to MFT. in the amount of $240,000. So that wasn't really a reduction in street sweeping, but it was a reallocation of those dollars to MFT. And those are all the reductions to that street and alley maintenance.
All right. Alderman Brennan has a question at this point.
So I'd like to suggest as a circle back, all these reductions are very helpful, but I see everybody up here taking notes. It'd be way more efficient if we had a list of exactly what you shared with us, Director, and I appreciate that level of detail. But I can guarantee that, we're not going to collect it all accurately or make sense of our own notes.
Well, so two things, just so it's clear. As the director did, and Noel, you were bringing this up, but I've asked the city manager to have each presenter detail as he's doing everywhere where there's a reduction so that we know what's being cut. And then, and we're also going to get a cumulative document that shows all of these in
that's
there.
what I'm requesting.
Right. So we have that coming.
Okay.
And then the question that whether it comes out now or Surf will go back, is you might say, okay, well, you're taking, X thousand dollars of inlet repair. What's the effect of that? If there's no effect, then we should have cut it a long time ago. If there is an effect, and you're saying, yes, there's not enough dollars, but we have to cut somewhere, then what is the effect so we can decide what we really want to cut, or that we can say we approve of those cuts? We got to start somewhere, and staff has put together the budget. So that's sort of the process. All right. Did you want to? Are you good, Alderman Brennan?
Yeah.
Alderman Nardini?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm clear what he's proposing, however, these are the cuts from proposed to presented budget. There were other things that we were, in other words, the $40,000 reduction that you talked about on line 540-200 guardrail, or garbage rail, thank you very much. Yeah. That was 8,000 this year and 8,000 next year. So you mean it was proposed, but upon the submitted budget, that was already cut?
Correct. That was part of the budget team's review.
I'm making a distinction between that and some of the other things where we've seen actual this year, next year differences that changed from year over year. A separate question is looking at the contract paving on the next page, 250, line 570-140. So in this case, so this is a cut that is actually from one year to the next. In other words, a presented budget to a presented budget, not a proposed to presented. But if we're going to 2027 and dramatically increasing, are we just delaying that expense, or does 2027 represent in the CAB some thicker suite of streets of duty that is getting realized in 2027, and these cuts in 2026 are actually streets? What I'm trying to say is, are we just cutting this and doing it next year, or not?
Well, the word is deferred. Is that what you're asking?
Garbage? Yes, deferred.
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head. We're, from the standpoint of the resurfacing program, there is work that is being deferred into the future as a result of the reduction for 2026. But I think, if I understand you correctly too, I don't think that necessarily 2027 is a makeup, right, for the reduction in 26.
You understand me correctly. That's what I'm asking.
No, I don't think so. There is a list, and I have the 26 projects. I don't have what's proposed in front of me readily available for 27, but there are other roadway projects that are in there, like even for next year.
So it could be that these projects that are deferred in 2026 are not obligatorily getting addressed in 2027?
Not necessarily, no.
Understood. Thanks.
Alderman Varamis.
I have a question. Under other services,
Alderman Varamis, you pull the microphone because I think we're probably being recorded.
thank you, Mayor. Under other services, 53999, can you reiterate what you said was what reduction was included in that?
It was a reduction in, there had been a $25,000 item for permeable paver maintenance that was removed.
The other part of that, Alderman Verimus, is we shifted street sweeping out of this cost center. And if you go to 3-16 under the motor fuel tax fund, you'll see we shifted $240,000 of cost. Street sweeping is an eligible MFT expense, and so that was shifted to the MFT fund in the proposed budget.
And the 25,000 was for pavers replacement?
Permeable paver maintenance.
Maintenance, meaning downtown Elmhurst?
Or
just anywhere we have?
Yeah, we have, anywhere we have them. There's periodically the stone that the pavers set on are a reason why they're permeable, and there are certain things that have to be done to maintain that over the course of time. So as that gets deferred, essentially it will become less permeable. So.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Irby.
Thank you, Mayor. Just Director Coyle mentioned that from Alderman Verimus's question about, I think, 25,000 you said you moved it to the motor fuel tax fund?
$240,000.
$240,000. So how do you move, and this is just, I'm playing, I'm a third grader, and motor fuel tax fund is a revenue source.
Correct.
And we don't spend from a motor fuel, well, we do spend from it, but we don't have a budget line item for a motor fuel tax fund. We have street cleaning and all the items we do spend money that were sourced from the motor fuel tax. So how do you move 240 to a revenue account?
Oh, it's not in a revenue account. So the motor fuel tax fund is its own fund. And so the motor fuel taxes go into that fund, and the city can use those funds for eligible expenses. And so one of the expenses that is eligible is street sweeping. That's an eligible cost that we can use motor fuel tax dollars to fund. So one of the costs that we shifted to the MFT fund this year, which if you go to 3-16, that's where you'll see it's under the special revenue tab. You'll see where this year we're budgeting for that $240,000 to come out of that fund as an expense line item.
That sounds awesome to me because I don't want the MUF. I try to avoid having street cleaning in the MUF. And so now we're going to have 240 that will be paid from the motor fuel tax for street cleaning, if I get it right, that won't come from property tax or from our water bill.
Correct. So street sweeping has been a general fund cost that has been paid for out of the general fund. So this moves it to the motor fuel tax fund. So there is a finite amount of resources in that fund. So that fund really right now pays for some street lighting, now proposed to have the street sweeping, and then the majority of the funding is for road reconstruction. So that's kind of what the balance is recommended in that fund.
All right, thank you. That's great news.
Alderman Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just have a question on the streets cleaning services, what amount that is relative to the overall in here?
And what page in line are you
to
on?
the motor fuel tax budget? Is that your question?
Right.
So the total expenses for the motor fuel tax budget for 2026 is 2.3 million, and so the 240,000 is
street cleaning?
Is street cleaning, yes.
Thank you.
10% or so.
Alderman Virgil.
Thank you. Question about the pavement striping row there. That's 531070. And there's a J form related to it as well, J form C. It talks about 40,000 for striping major roadways and another 40,000 for the city's share of striping IDOT controlled intersections and so forth. Are those sort of special one-time items that we don't normally be involved in?
No, these are not one-time items, unfortunately. The city has agreements with IDOT regarding this work that they have been more, I guess, insistent on enforcing with us in terms of our responsibilities in fulfilling those. And so of this $80,000 increase for next year, 40,000 of that is to stripe essentially major, I'll use like North Avenue as an example. So some of the intersections on North Avenue that are within the city of Elmhurst, we will be striping. And this is per agreements that the city has with IDOT to do that. And that'll be something that'll have to be done periodically going into the future.
Okay. So I see in 2027, the amount is actually ratcheted up another $20,000 for that one. I mean, is this just something we're going to see every year?
I don't think it will be sort of this exponential type increase going on, but there's a couple things that are happening there. We have seen, so of this $80,000 that's proposed for next year, half of that has been basically just to continue our existing maintenance at the prices, the bid prices that we're seeing in the market for this type of work. So just to do the same thing we've always done is going to essentially cost us another $40,000 next year. The other thing that does show up in 2027 is that there have been some areas that I think probably most people have seen this and realize it is through that neighborhood traffic study process, there have been areas where additional striping's been recommended or different types of striping for more visible crosswalks. Some of that work's been done over the past couple of years, but we are getting to the point where it will have to now kind of become part of the regular maintenance program. So there's a few things all sort of going on there at the same time.
Okay, all right.
That's what
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Alderman Bram.
Yeah, on page 249, line item 531075. I know the committee, the Public Works Committee, talked about this in the past, residential stormwater management. Just looking at past years, we've only hit 6 digits of expense essentially back in 2023 at 108,000 and change, but we're still budgeting at 40,000? 180,000. Is there a reason why we wouldn't cut this line item, or at least reduce this line item?
I'll say just from I guess a customer service perspective, we'd like to be able to, if we have residents that are coming to us that are interested in this program, we want to be able to respond and have them be able to follow through on their projects and take advantage of it. You're right, it's kind of tracked below budget here for the last few years. That can vary. We've been, as I saw the city manager knocking on the table, I would do the same thing. Just we've been very fortunate that we have not had really wet weather, and we have had years when we have those big storms that we see a real spike in the use of this program too. So I guess we haven't wanted to be in a position of having to turn someone away if they want to utilize it. But again, I think obviously ultimately the funding level for that would sit with the city council.
I'd like to just make a request for a circle back on that one, please.
Okay, other discussion on street and alley maintenance?
Mr. Mayor.
Treasurer.
We called the circle back, but I pulled up 22. This line item was 170,000 for context. I know we get cut off at 23 on there, so it, to Director Belicki's point, it was.
Why are you doing further investigation?
I know, I was going to ask the question, and then you were like, let's come back. And I was like,
Would you like your circle back to remain, Alderman Bram?
Yeah, we'll leave it for now.
All right, very
But
good.
thank you, City Treasurer.
All right, we'll move on to the next section, snow removal.
Snow removal, basically, this cost center really covers the overtime for the city's snow response as well as related employee benefits. There are some contract snow removal services in here as well. And a small portion of our commodities that we use for snow removal. The couple of changes, there are two J forms that are associated with this cost center, and again, a common theme. One is for the central garage services, and the other one is for the vehicle replacement contribution. That's a pretty straightforward account.
Okay. Discussion on snow removal? I think we're good. We'll move on to forestry, 255.
Okay, forestry. There were a few reductions that took place in the forestry cost center, as well as there are 4 J forms that are related to this. If you'd like, I'll just, it's a shorter list than the street and alley maintenance, but just for everyone's benefit, the reductions that occurred in this cost center, there were 2 in the 531135 account. There were some dollars that were proposed for landscape bed restoration in the amount of $22,000. And there were some dollars in there, $64,750 for continuation with First Street landscaping. One of the reasons why this was reduced going into next year is that we do have dollars budgeted this year. There's a anticipation of carrying those dollars over into 26. So in a sense, this was somewhat of a redundant item, but that's also one of those that's included. And then there are 2 separate accounts, but they both relate to tree planting. So the account 531-140 is the tree planting account, and there was a reduction of $17,500 there. And then the 541-300 account, that's the actual commodity of the trees. There was a reduction of $27,500, and what that means in those 2 line items combined is a reduced tree planting program from 600 planned to be planted down to 500 for 2026. And those are the reductions in that cost center. I can just touch on real quick the J forms. The first one is in the contract tree trimming account, 531-130. There's a proposed increase of $50,000. We are still maintaining a 7-year cycle with our tree pruning. However, we have seen tree pruning prices escalate by as much as 20%. And we're going into some areas of where we have some larger trees that need to be pruned as part of our regular cycle, and that does generally drive up costs as well. So there's a couple of factors that play with that proposed $50,000 increase. The second one, the 541,300 account, I know that this seems a little counterintuitive, but this shows an increase of $47,500. And that was essentially a reallocation, just sort of we talked about street sweeping. This was a reallocation of funds that were originally budgeted in the motor fuel tax fund this year, but are moving back into the general fund for 2026. The next item is the vehicle replacement contribution that has, again, been a common theme in the 590,911 account. And there has also been an allocation of IT service costs across all city departments. And so there is an addition of $24,500 in forestry for next year, where there was not that in prior years.
All right, Alderman Brennan.
Thank you. Historically, there's been a cost associated with, Dutch elm disease and removal of those trees. Is that captured in the tree trimming budget, or how is?
For city parkway trees?
Yes. And maybe the better question is, where are we in that process? Are we pretty much done with that, or are there still trees out there that?
There are. We actually, like some other things that we've talked about with respect to the stormwater program, we see some kind of ebbs and flows of that. This year, actually, we did see a bit of an uptick in removal of public parkway trees that had Dutch elm disease. So it's not always obvious why. I mean, I think we had a lot of hot and dry weather that can stress the trees out and make them more susceptible to something like that. But that is, we do active inspections in the summertime. We have staff that are dedicated to that, and we do still actively remove trees that have Dutch elm disease.
Oh, Dutch elm, we have another one, I can't remember the name.
Emerald ash borer.
Yeah, right, and we still have some of those.
Yes.
But do you think that's part of the tree trimming budget, or?
That is not. The Dutch elm disease is not reflected in the tree, that increase, the proposed increase for tree pruning.
So where would I see that budget item?
155, line item, last three digits?
Yeah, 531155.
Got it. Thank you. I didn't see that. All right, thank you.
And you, just to add, Alderman Bryan, you could see the estimate in that account for this year is 75,000 versus the 50,000 that was budgeted. So that kind of just shows what I mentioned in terms of the increase for this year.
Thank you.
Other discussion? Alderman Virgil.
Thank you. In sitting through the budget review cycle last year, I remember there was a piece of equipment that Public Works was purchasing I think it was to clean dirt, essentially. And as part of that discussion, that was supposed to help reduce topsoil purchases in future years. And I'm just trying to see if that's actually reflected here. I see a line item for topsoil, 541290. Is that the right line I should be looking at for that?
Whoops, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong cost center. Pardon me.
It's on, 255.
So we did this year, the estimate for that account is $12,000 versus the $20,000 budget. The dollars, to your point, we kind of made a decision to keep that flat for next year.
And the year after.
And the year after, yes.
Are we expecting to see savings, though?
I would have to get back to you on that. I don't have that information handy, but.
Just follow up.
Yeah.
Thank you. Circle back.
All right, we have a circle back. 541290.
Thank you.
Alderman Virgil.
Another question. You had just mentioned earlier that the the line item for trees was getting moved back into the general fund, and I was just trying to understand why that was.
I can take that one. So when we had looked at the tree budget and allocating those costs, we had thought that trees were an allowable expense. When we did some further digging with MFT and reviewing that, we found that that was not an eligible line item, so that's why we moved that back.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Virgil, Irby, still looking at you, yeah.
I'll take that as a credit. On page 255, and we move to line item contract tree removing 531130. So we were kind of scooting along 150, and then we bumped up another 50,000 to 200. That's probably a good thing. What I'm thinking, my question boils down to our new vehicle replacement contribution. If we're going to use a contract truck and a crew for $50,000 more than we did previous years, would that take off a little heat off of our tree trimming truck? And therefore, maybe instead of 322.6, and maybe you've already addressed that, but since we have the same number in each, maybe we could bring down the 322.6 and get those 100 more trees. I'd like to get us back to 600 trees. So is there a way we could move that money and get some more trees?
So I think,
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think the line item, the tree trimming increasing isn't to do additional work, it's to maintain the same amount of work, just the pricing is increasing. So there's no,
so the
there's
price
a neutral,
went up per
yeah, so there's
per
a
tree
neutral
trimmer.
impact on our fleet.
I didn't read the J form. My bad. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? We move on. Electrical.
Okay, electrical, page 2-57. This is a cost center that actually has, there's no proposed reductions in there that are kind of in line with what we've been discussing with the other cost centers. We do have 4 accounts that are proposed to increase going into 2026. The first is 531,170. That's traffic signal maintenance. It includes a $2,800 increase for IDOT charges that are related to traffic signals along state highways, as well as an additional $3,200 that's allocated for Cook County's maintenance charges for signals along County Line Road. The next item is a proposed increase in account 541,270 in the small tools account. As kind of as I mentioned in an earlier item, this is one of those just kind of fluctuates year to year depending on what a particular division within Public Works might need. For this coming year, there is a proposed increase of $5,000 for a replacement of an underground locator for the group. That's used to locate, obviously, traffic signal lines as well as electrical streetlight cables. And then, kind of reflective of earlier discussion, we have the establishment of the vehicle replacement contributions in the amount of $176,200 into the central fleet fund. That's out of account 590,911, and then in account 590,920 is again that kind of updated allocation of IT services that was not previously reflected in the electrical 6064 accounts.
All right, questions? Alderman Baker.
Hi, thank you. 2 or 3 questions just on definitions of your luminaries, which would be
Alderman Baker, would you also pull the microphone down just for recording? Thank you. Sure.
page 257, line item 541205, luminaries encompass what?
Those would be streetlights. kind of a, it seems like a, yeah, a bit of an odd terminology, but that's, yeah, that's what they are.
Nice reduction.
Oh, I thought we were bringing luminaries into town. All right, but whatever.
Main Street. And then one follow-up, line item 541280, standards.
Put simply, polls.
Oh,
Yes.
like the simple. Okay, thank you.
You know, I have a question. In the line item 531170, and it's actually the first on the J form where we talk about the increase, are we getting chargebacks from IDOT? Well, County Line Road, Cook County's maintaining that, and we contribute to that? And is that the same for the state where they're doing it and we're contributing to what they're doing?
Yes.
Okay. All right, additional discussion? And we'll go on to rubbish disposal.
Rubbish disposal, 6065, this is on page 2-59. So with respect to the yard waste program and the rubbish collection program, the charges are accounted for in this cost center. As I mentioned in opening remarks, the city is out for bid on this service going into 2026. And we really just kind of working together between Public Works and Finance, talking about what might be expected. We're ballparking in an expected 5 to 10% cost increase going into the next contract. We've seen some other communities kind of starting to go through the same process, and it's not out of line with what they're seeing. The other thing I would say is that the contract that we're currently in was something that predated, I hesitate to say it, but the COVID years of some of the higher inflation that hasn't necessarily receded. So we expect to see increases in that range.
All right.
I can add just one thing too. So this is a pass-through expense, and that there are revenues coming into the general fund to offset these expenses. So any increase in expenses, there's also a corresponding increase to revenue on the other side.
So if the rates are lower, the revenues will be lower. If they're higher, they'll be higher. Alderman Irby.
Yeah, I think you made a quick question on this and probably a circle back. Which line item will be the administrative charge that's on top of the contract? So we'll end up getting our contract back, as Director Blicky said, in November, hopefully. We'll get a number that'll dovetail in within the 4190, let's hope. So whatever that number between 4190 and the contract, or whatever you guys put as a placeholder on the contract, 5% from last year's actual, I'm taking it from what you said. Can we get a breakdown of what your total budgeted admin is and what the contract was budgeted at? And that should add up, I'm guessing, to either the 4190 or one of these three components, probably 434,105. Thank you.
That was a circle back?
All right, it's a circle back. Anyone else? All right, we'll go on to municipal buildings.
This is page 2-61. This is the last cost center for Public Works in the general fund. And there are a number of J forms that are associated with this cost center, some of them familiar themes from other sections, but just kind of running through top to bottom. The first item is an increase in electricity supply costs. That's in account 530,180. The proposed increase of $8,000 in that account. Account number 531,190 for building maintenance, there's a proposed increase of $72,150. And you can see in the explanation that the maintenance budget for 2026 includes $60,000 that was previously budgeted under other services in 2025. So there was a reallocation of some dollars into this account. And in addition, the budget allocates another $24,000 for OSHA-required fall protection improvements at City Hall, $20,000 for repairs to the separation tank at the Public Works Garage due to corrosion, and another $22,000 for the replacement of overhead doors at the garage. And lastly, $16,000 for the installation of fans at the Public Works Garage as well. These are large kind of overhead fans in the garage area. Just moving along, account number 531-210 has a proposed increase of $167,700. The current year budget, 2025, included only the property management fees for the city-owned building at 180 West Park. In prior years, the building operating costs were also charged to this account, which is what's shown in the 2024 expenses. The 2026 budget essentially reinstates funding for both the property management as well as the building's operating costs. So that's what's reflected in that number. There was an increase in 536-105 for liability insurance costs, which again, that's something that probably see reflected across many accounts throughout the city because that gets dispersed among most cost centers. There was an increase in, proposed increase in account number 541-270 for small tools. The addition for next year is proposed to be $3,000 for the purchase of a compact floor scrubber that can be used for taking care of the parking decks. And then the last three items, F, G, and H, that's the first one is account 59910. Again, the contribution to the central garage services wasn't previously allocated to this account. That's the amount of $30,100. Account number 590-911 is the vehicle replacement contribution, the amount of $45,300. And then account 590-920 is again the allocation for IT services, which was updated for 2026.
Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. In regards to item 531190, building maintenance, I'm seeing some items there that, of course, are required for the upkeep of the garage, but, and obviously there's some OSHA elements there, but are all those required, or can any of them be deferred further? And that may be a circle back question, but looking for items that we may be eligible to cut, I'm just wondering if any of those items could be deferred.
Yeah, I would like to get back to you on that, just so we can have a little further discussion at the staff level and have a good response for you.
Obviously none of the safety items, but I just want to know the consequences, like repairing corrosion. Of course, the sooner you get to it, the better, but is there, for example, a significant impact if we wait an extra year or two or that?
Yeah, we can talk about that and get back on a circle back on that one.
Thank you.
Alderman Irby?
Thank you. Property management services, 531-210, probably a circle back. Is there a way we can get some detail on that as far as with a property line item, in addition to the 180 Park, maybe the arcade building, any other buildings that have property management services with them, and so we can get an idea of this is the property list that has property management services, and maybe a brief statement on the revenue with it, if that's appropriate or not at this time, just so we know what the revenue expenses are for this, I want to call it an ancillary function, especially with our police department popping into 180, and we've talked about funding some of the police station with the property sales. So I'd like to get a little bit more comfort with a little bit more detail, if that's possible, in a circle back.
All right, do you understand what the circle back is?
Yes, yes. There is a revenue account on 2-8 also for the revenue associated with this, and this is just for 180 Park that's in this line item.
So do we need a circle back, or can I just find it here?
If you want additional detail, we certainly can provide more detail, but the revenue is on 2-8. The majority of that line item is 180 Park, which corresponds with the expenses in the 531-210. But we're more than happy, we can provide P&Ls for the
So that would give me a
rental properties if you
180
want.
Park in detail, but not the arcade or what other properties might be in the property management
So the
services.
arcade building is in the TIF fund, so that's where you would see the revenues and expenses, but we can certainly provide those as.
Thank you.
Additional questions, discussion? All right. City Manager, so for Public Works, capital projects is still under there. So I'd like to go at least one step further so we can not have our staff have to come back again. And we might get done right at 10 anyway, but let's go to capital projects 265.
2-65 really is a place where the more significant capital projects get accounted for, and there is one J form that is associated with this cost center. It's account number 57160. There's two significant projects that are budgeted in there for 2026. There is $3,548,000, $350 in funding for the construction of the bike and ped bridge over Route 83. And then secondarily, there's $499,320 that is allocated for improvements that were recommended in the bicycle and pedestrian plan. So those two projects, that is where they're accounted for.
So does the $3,548,000 come out of grants?
So the Route 83 pedestrian bridge is paid by grants, and so there is $1 million budgeted for that. The additional contribution that was remaining is budgeted to come from the capital fund, and the one caveat I wanted to make in total, so everything in this account is paid for by a capital contribution from the capital fund. So just to make sure everyone understands where the funding for these projects are coming from that aren't funded by grants.
And then we have the additional grant that we talked about last meeting from the state, part of the $400 million. That's not.
$1 million of it is included in the budget. We had an estimate when we prepared the budget. We actually got 1.3 million. So there's some funding in the budget that's coming from the capital fund to fund a portion of that isn't needed. So the capital contribution will need to be less. But there's no impact, like this line item here has no impact on like the general fund balance. It's all funded by the capital fund.
All right, discussion, Alderman Bram.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Mayor, but I'm still confused. So last meeting, there was an announcement of additional grant funding,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
I thought I was under the impression that the whole kit and caboodle, technical term, is now covered.
It is correct. When we did the budget, all we had was you're getting $1 million when we went to print on this. So we didn't have the exact number yet in hand. We had been told $1 million. So what we budgeted for in this document, when it went to print, based on the information we had, it was an extra $1 million. So in this budget, that project is funded by $1 million in the grant and $300 from the capital fund is what's in this document. What actually we received is a little over 1.3 million, which will fund the entire project, so we won't need the additional 300,000 from the capital fund to contribute to the general fund.
Okay, that explains it. The other piece on this line item, and I don't know if it's a circle back or a more appropriate places this might be needed, but that close to $500,000 for the bike and ped plan improvements. I mean, to me, that's a significant amount of monies. Could we get a breakout of what those improvements are planned for next year to see if maybe we should or could delay some of those?
All right, Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. I had the same question as Alderman Brand, but as I understand it, just to clarify, because those pedestrian improvements for the bicycle and pedestrian plan were funded from the capital fund. If we delay those plans or don't use those funds, they're just going to sit there in the capital fund and not be transferred to the general fund, so they wouldn't change the outlook on our budget.
Correct. So you'd reduce the expense, but you'd also reduce the revenue coming in from the capital fund to pay for it.
And the cost may go up.
I figured something out. Great.
Or it could be reallocated.
Good. Alderman Virgil.
Similar topic here. So that money for the bike and ped plan improvements, is that different than the recommendations that come out of the traffic studies, or is this?
Yes.
This is actually, okay, it's,
Yes, that goes, those go back to the bike and ped plan that was adopted a couple years ago, yeah.
okay, so yes, I would like to see the detail on those as well. Thank you.
I just want to, as we think about the budget, when we say deferred, there's different kinds of deferrals. I say, well, we're going to do maintenance on the garages. Can we let them go a little longer? Are we going to defer purchase a car? Can we last a little longer, as opposed to something we're going to do and we're just going to pay for it next year as opposed to this year? We'll face the same problem next year. It's not really, it's a kind of deferral, but it's not like an expense. It's not the same thing as deferring a car for a later purchase. But when we get the document that we talked about with Alderman Brennan that talks about what the cuts, we'll look a little bit more deeply at what we are looking at. All right. Alderman Irby.
Real quick, on page 264, we've got some fuel under commodities, compressed natural gas, diesel, gasoline. So 3 line items that we put into our vehicles and our fleet. And so I want to understand how we account for this. So the question, I guess, boils down to, let's just take gasoline, 460,000. Are we buying 460,000 gallons of gasoline here, and then we allocate it back? I mean, can you tell me where that gasoline flowed in our new service fund, fleet service fund, just with respect to gasoline, so I understand how that flows?
No pun intended.
So gasoline is now allocated, if it's in the fleet fund on 6-5, and so that's an operating cost of the fleet fund that gets allocated to each department. And again, that maintenance allocation is allocated on the percent of that department's maintenance compared to overall maintenance. And so that's how gasoline is getting allocated. And then that's how it always has been. So that's always been an allocated cost. It was just allocated from the general fund versus allocated from a central fleet fund. So that allocation is really unchanged year to year. It's just where those funds are being allocated from.
So did my 460,000 in gas example, is that how much we're buying in total gas for the whole fleet?
Correct.
And then some of that money gets moved also over to the service fund, or the fleet service fund?
Everything now for 2026, all of the gasoline and diesel is budgeted in the fleet fund. So it is no longer, so the cost center that you're looking at on 2-64, that is the kind of prior how we accounted for central fleet maintenance. And you'll see for 2026 and 2027, those are zeroed out. Those costs got moved to the 6-5 to that fleet fund.
So I guess I'm still confused. We'll probably have to take it offline. Thank you.
All right. So we will honor our commitment to end at 10 or as close thereto as possible. I thank you all for your attention. I hope you sleep well and have visions of budget figures in your head. A motion to adjourn, please. Alderman Bellinger with a motion, Alderman Schenkel with a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. We are adjourned. Thank you.